30 years ago, a film debuted that would change movies forever. It was a mashup of trashy and classy cinema traditions that transformed how we make, watch, and talk about film. A movie whose impact continues to be felt across pop culture. That movie was Pulp Fiction. The second film from Quentin Tarantino was less a reinvention of cinema than a remix of old tropes in a new style, but it hit the movie world like a shot of adrenaline.
I love you, Pumpkin.
I love you, honey bunny.
Everybody be cool, this is a robbery!
Any of you pricks move, and I'll execute every last one of you!
When Pulp Fiction premiered in 1994, it felt a bit different than the other movies at Cannes that year. They were mostly classy European arthouse fare like Burnt by the Sun and Three Colors Red, films supposedly about the real world, about history, about politics, about big ideas. Pulp Fiction wasn't like that. Pulp Fiction felt like a movie, and a pretty trashy movie at that. It took recycled characters and storylines from 1,000 crime films we'd already seen. So we had the story of the two hitmen on their final job, Jules Winfield and Vincent Vega. The story of a mysterious, all-powerful gangster, Marcellus Wallace.
That's pride. Pride.
I said, goddamn! Goddamn!
The story of the gangster's wife, the femme fatale, Mia Wallace. The story of Butch, a noble boxer who won't throw his fight.
It's time, Butch.
And the story of a professional fixer who cleans up messy situations.
Sure is.
I'm Winston Wolfe. I solve problems.
The actors in Pulp Fiction act as if they're characters in a movie, with snappy and instantly quotable movie lines.
You know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system. They wouldn't know what the quarter pounder is.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
Whose motorcycle is this?
It's a chopper, baby.
Whose chopper is this?
Zed's.
Who's Zed?
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
And endless references to pop culture.
You heard him.
Nobody's gonna hurt anybody. We're all gonna be like three little Fonzies here. And what's Fonzie like? Come on, Yolanda, what's Fonzie like?
Cool.
What?
Cool.
Correctamundo. And that's what we're gonna be. We're gonna be cool.
Pulp Fiction does not have a film score. Instead, we have a series of needle drops.
You'll be a woman soon. I love you so much, can't count all the ways I died for you, girl, and all they can say is
Count flowers on the wall, that don't bother me at all.
Sometimes the songs play within the world of the characters, and they even sing along.
Smoking cigarettes and watching Captain Kirk. Now don't tell me I've nothing to do.
Sometimes the songs are outside the story, used ironically to comment on a scene. The violence in Pulp Fiction is both extreme and often absurd.
I mean, do you think that God came down from heaven and stopped us?
Oh, what's happening?
Oh, man, I shot Marvin in the face.
Why the you do that?
Well, I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident.
By themselves, none of these elements were new. It was how Tarantino remixed these old styles, creating a movie world that is entirely self-referential, an artistic approach known as postmodernism. Pulp Fiction wasn't the first postmodern film, but it was the film that would bring this artistic movement to the movie mainstream. Postmodernism is a rebellious idea that comes from French philosophers like Jean-François Lyotard and Jean Baudrillard, and from American critics like Frederick Jameson. Postmodernism in art means challenging the concept that there's one reality or one big story to explain the world. Postmodern artists can make art out of anything. A pipe, a urinal, even a dead shark. They see no distinction between high art and pop culture, and they see their own work as inseparably intertwined with the art of their past. A perfect example is the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album cover. The band stands before a crowd of their inspirations, artistic, historic, and political. Marilyn Monroe and Bob Dylan, Marlon Brando and Karl Marx. The Beatles are saying their art involves reinterpreting what came before, even reinterpreting previous iterations of themselves as pop artists, to make art that will itself become grist for the cultural mill of the future. That's postmodernism. Pulp Fiction is postmodern cinema from tip to toe. Instead of one grand story, it tells multiple narratives from different perspectives, even from different movie genres. The gangster film, the musical romance, the horror movie.
I want that trophy.
It copies directly from the cinema of the past. The glowing briefcase scene echoes an almost identical image from 50s noir Kiss Me Deadly. This street-crossing double take evokes a similar shot from Alfred Hitchcock's classic, Psycho.
You can get a stick.
And the dotted square sight gag comes straight from old cartoons.
This watch.
When we see Christopher Walken playing a Vietnam vet talking to Butch about his dead dad's sacrifice,
This watch was on your daddy's wrist when he was shot down over Hanoi.
we think less about the Vietnam War than about Vietnam War movies like The Deer Hunter, also starring Christopher Walken. This is what postmodernists call hyperreality. Art's imitation of artistic reality, the copy of a copy, can feel more real than the thing itself. Maybe the most postmodern thing about Pulp Fiction, the one thing everyone notices, is its non-linear storyline. Okay, pay attention. Here's the plot of Pulp Fiction. We start in the diner. Pumpkin and Honey Bunny plan the robbery. Then we meet philosophical hitmen, Vincent and Jules. They eat cheeseburgers and kill the thieves who stole their boss's glowing briefcase. At the bar, Marcellus tells boxer Butch to throw his next fight. Vincent buys heroin before taking Mia out for a date, a dance, and a $5 milkshake. Back home, she overdoses on his heroin, but is saved by a shot of adrenaline to the heart. We flash back to Butch as a kid, hearing the story of his dad's gold watch. Butch wins his fight, retrieves his dad's gold watch from his apartment, but there he surprises Vincent and kills him. Escaping, he and Marcellus are captured by sadistic hillbillies, but Butch and his samurai sword save them. Marcellus forgives Butch for not throwing his fight, and Butch and his girlfriend ride off on Zed's chopper. Then we go back to the briefcase scene. Vincent and Jules survive being shot at. Driving home, they mess up the car with a dead body, and the wolf is called to clean things up. Later, having breakfast, they're caught in the Pumpkin Honey Bunny robbery. No one gets shot, and they leave. Roll credits. But chronologically, the film is all out of order. The diner robbery actually happens in the middle. The suitcase incident, the wolf, and the cleanup were all before that. After the cafe robbery, Marcellus tells Butch to throw his fight, Vincent buys drugs, and goes out on his date with Mia. On that same night, Butch recalls his dad's watch story and wins his fight. The next day, Butch goes to his apartment, kills Vincent, saves Marcellus, gets the girl, and rides off into the sunset. Instead of one straight story, Pulp Fiction is a postmodern cacophony of multiple timelines and multiple perspectives. Major characters in one tale are just bit players in others. The film undermines the whole idea that there's one big story, one big narrative that can explain everything. Pulp Fiction's most famous postmodern remix, turning old culture into something new, comes in the movie's iconic dance scene. The dance is pure postmodernism. Tarantino is stealing from classic cinema and pop culture to create a newly iconic moment of movie magic. The director says he drew inspiration from Disney cartoons and from Jean-Luc Godard, making no distinction between high and low culture. Some of the scene's dance moves come directly from an old episode of the Batman TV series. Others from Fellini's classic film, 8½. The Pulp Fiction dance is a mashup, an ultimate remix of all the culture that's impacted and inspired Quentin Tarantino. All this is taking place inside Jack Rabbit Slim's, a themed restaurant where all the employees are copies of pop culture icons, from Marilyn Monroe and Buddy Holly to James Dean. Even casting John Travolta as Vincent Vega is postmodern, since watching Travolta dance pulls up cultural memories of the actor in his most famous movie roles. It's as if Tarantino is saying, we all swim in this pop culture ocean, and the best way to understand this world is by remixing and reinterpreting the pop culture that made us. You could see that Pierre did truly. But Pulp Fiction was and remains controversial, as much for what Tarantino says as for the company he keeps. Critics of Pulp Fiction see a movie with no original ideas, just a cut-and-paste job of films that came before. What some postmodernists call influence or inspiration, others think is just plain stealing.
No, nothing that bad.
Because many of the films Tarantino chooses to borrow from are blaxploitation movies of the 1970s, films like Shaft, Superfly, and Coffee, Tarantino has also been accused of cultural appropriation. It hasn't helped that his characters often lean heavily on the N-word.
Did you notice a sign out in the front of my house that said dead storage?
In a scene that remains hard to watch, Tarantino cast himself berating the main black character with a stream of racial curses.
You know why you didn't see that sign? Why? Because it ain't there, because storing dead ain't my business, that's why.
This isn't just a Pulp Fiction thing. Tarantino uses the N-word 38 times in Jackie Brown, and a jaw-dropping 110 times in his black western, Django Unchained. Spike Lee, another giant of independent cinema, called out Tarantino for his use of the racial slur. But Samuel L. Jackson, who has worked with both directors, defends Tarantino, saying he writes intelligent and complex black characters. Another problem for many in Pulp Fiction is how the film depicts violence. It's not just that there's so much of it, it's that violence is often played for laughs, or made to seem cool. Tarantino's argument, a very postmodernist argument, is that on-screen violence has nothing to do with real violence. Movie violence, in Tarantino's view, is not much different than a dance sequence. It's just another cinematic technique, designed to dazzle, to shock, or to entertain. But one aspect of Pulp Fiction's legacy is harder to dismiss: producer Harvey Weinstein. Tarantino worked for years with Weinstein on 8 movies. All that time, it was an open secret that Weinstein was allegedly assaulting and sexually harassing women, many of them actresses in his own movies. Weinstein was found guilty of abuse in 2 separate trials, but he has appealed, and one of the cases is now being retried. Tarantino now says he knew about some of the abuse allegations at the time, and that he should have spoken up. Love it or hate it, you can't argue with Pulp Fiction's success. It was an indie blockbuster that transformed the movie business. There were American indie films before Tarantino. Directors like Jim Jarmusch, the Coen brothers, or David Lynch were creating weird movie worlds with multiple storylines and postmodern sensibilities long before Tarantino picked up his camera. But before Tarantino, indie films were more or less a niche business for a tiny audience of cinephiles. Pulp Fiction turned cult movies into big business. It was the first alt-indie blockbuster. Made for just over $8 million, Pulp Fiction grossed more than $200 million at the box office worldwide, more than any R-rated indie film before it. Traditionally, indie movies in America were released slowly, starting in a few theaters and adding screens as word of mouth and critical support spread. Pulp Fiction went big fast. It was released on more than 1,000 theaters nationwide, like a studio tentpole. And it worked. Whatever you think of Pulp Fiction, its success created a new market for weird American films, helping directors who came before him find a broader audience and bigger box office.
Get out of here! No. I'll show you.
That's so
The way of the samurai is one of immediacy, and it is best to dash in headlong.
Give me that baby! I want that baby! Give me that baby, you warthog from hell!
There's a high-speed pursuit, ends here, and then this execution type deal.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if our suspect was from Brainerd.
With Pulp Fiction, Tarantino did more than just revive the Hollywood career of John Travolta. The blockbuster success of his trashy little film helped open a way for filmmakers as diverse as Wes Anderson and Spike Jonze, Christopher Nolan and Paul Thomas Anderson, to help their weird visions enter the mainstream. Today, there's no denying Pulp Fiction's influence. The movie's impact is seen everywhere. Pulp Fiction may have started as an indie alternative film, but the movie's iconic imagery has long since entered the mainstream. They are part of the fabric of modern pop culture, referenced in cartoons and TV shows. Cited, ironically or not, by artists high and low. The 90s saw a wave of Pulp Fiction imitators. Some were good, some were bad, and some were very, very ugly. They would use the same palette of hip dialogue, jumbled story chronology, and nasty stylized violence to tell their stories on screen. His style has become so influential, in 2018, the Oxford English Dictionary added the word Tarantino-esque to its lexicon. Pulp Fiction's influence was global. Mexican drama Amores Perros uses Tarantino-esque techniques, including multiple-strand storytelling and non-linear narratives.
So who's the gov? Who are we doing this for?
You're doing it for me. It's all you need to know. You know because you need to know.
I see. One of those on a need-to-know basis things, is it? Like one of those James Bond films.
Careful.
Guy Ritchie gave Tarantino's slick, pop-savvy dialogue and over-the-top movie violence a British accent.
Ta-da.
Ich denke, wir können die Hände jetzt runternehmen.
Hände hoch, Überfahrt! Was guckst du? Gib mir die ganze Geld oder du bist tot.
Da kommen Sie ungefähr 1 Minute zu spät.
And Pulp Fiction got a German translation via action comedy Knocking on Heaven's Door. With Pulp Fiction, Tarantino cross-referenced and footnoted the movie and TV culture of his childhood, only to see his movie become a cinematic lexicon for the directors who came after him. We're all now living in the postmodern universe made possible by Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. But some filmmakers are trying to look beyond it. 30 years after Pulp Fiction, postmodern, self-referential movies are everywhere. You have Marvel blockbusters filled with superheroes exchanging movie references.
Oh, that's what I heard.
Wait, but who? Who told you that?
Star Trek, Terminator, Time Cop, Time After Time. Quantum Leap. Wrinkle in Time, Somewhere in Time.
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Hot Tub Time Machine. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Basically any movie that deals with time travel.
Die Hard? No, that's not one.
This is known.
Kids' animation is full of movie references, even though the audience, being kids, have often not seen the movies being quoted.
I know what you're thinking. He is the least qualified person to lead us. And you are right.
The most successful female-led movie ever is a deconstruction of a pop culture consumerist icon.
Hey, Barbie.
You can't get more postmodern than that.
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
It's as if we are all now Vincent Vega walking through Jackrabbit Slims, surrounded by Xeroxed versions of the stories that came before. But from within this postmodern, image-saturated copy of a copy culture, some filmmakers are trying to find a new way forward.
Those overloaded mind usually dies. Instead, her mind was fractured.
At first glance, 2023 Oscar winner Everything Everywhere All at Once seems to be playing the same old postmodern games as Pulp Fiction.
Experiences every world.
It puts pop culture referencing into overdrive, zapping between film genres like a hyperactive kid surfing the internet.
I was just seeing too much. Lost any sense of morality, any belief in objective truth. What does she want?
The sentiment at the heart of the film, however, is genuine.
Here, all we get are a few specks of time where any of this actually makes any sense.
We are supposed to take these characters seriously as real people, even as they are saturated, nearly drowning in outside media influence.
1, 2, 3. Okay, let's hold it there. Cut.
British director Joanna Hogg takes a similar, if far less hectic approach in her film The Souvenir, Part 2. In it, she recounts the story of her real life, from the ordinary
One of my favorite qualities about him is like a truly loving person.
Seems to me he was quite dark.
to the extremely traumatic,
With life and this deception that
filtering it all through the cinematic means that Hogg, as the director, is using to process it. These films use many of the same tricks as Tarantino, but you'd never call them Tarantino-esque.
Look, this is your universe. One bubble flowing.
Instead, they are using postmodernist methods to more accurately capture the felt experience of life for many of us at this moment, where all of us are struggling to find meaning from within our own personal digital information overloads. You can call this metamodernism, or hypermodernism, or even postmodernism. But whatever shape cinema is in now, whatever stories the next generation of directors want to tell, and whatever forms they decide to use to tell them, any search for the origin of today's movie metaverse must inevitably lead back to a scrappy little indie film that premiered in Cannes 30 years ago. What's your take on Pulp Fiction and its legacy? Let us know in the comments section. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.